Normally I'd say happy Friday because Fridays are always great, but coming off that game last night, it's a little bit less than happy as the Wolves now trail 2-0 to the Oklahoma City Thunder in the Western Conference Final after getting beat 118-103 last night. So let's jump into this. Your guys' reactions to what at times, especially in that third quarter, again, felt a little bit demoralizing as the Thunder just kind of started to pull away big time, Will. It felt like another demoralizing loss for the Wolves going down 2-0 now.
Yeah, demoralizing is a good word. I think there were times on Tuesday in game one where I felt emotions of anger and frustration and why the heck do they keep calling these fouls that SGA is just grifting for? And last night there wasn't as much of that. There were a few annoying moments where he was still doing the flailing. And some of his facial expressions when he's trying to draw calls just kind of annoy me. That is beside the point. He played extremely well. On the night he received his MVP award, he was a little more ethical and he was completely unguardable. When he gets to his spots in the mid-range, it's just a layup. They're automatic. He is extremely good. Like I understand why he won the MVP award. That was a very impressive performance. So it was in some ways just demoralizing and just kind of defeating. Like there was a point where the Thunder were 5 for 27 from deep and they were still up by 11. And then it only got worse from there. I think they were up as much as 24. The Wolves started to play a little bit in the fourth quarter, but it was never a real push. They were down by too much. And it just, I don't know. It just stinks. I think after the season is over, we can look back and you know what? The series isn't over. I should say that series isn't over, but if it does end in this round, we'll eventually be able to look back and think that this was still a really successful season for the Wolves. Anthony Edwards is 23, back-to-back Western Conference Finals after that big trade. But right now, I just feel kind of defeated. I don't see how the Wolves can beat this Thunder team in 4 of the next 5 games, unfortunately.
I like how you say a little bit more ethical, and yet he still had more free throw attempts last night than he did in game one. Still had 15 of the Thunder's 24 free throw attempts, so still getting a metric bleep ton of free throws, more than anybody else.
He did, but there's free throws are not all created equally. Right. Some of them are soft. Some of them are like, all right, Jaden McDaniel's hand was in the cookie jar and he went up. That's a smart play. That was a foul. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, like there was so much outrage after game one and he had 14 and obviously it was the way he got those. And then last night he had more.
Yeah. And the Wolves drove more in this game. Yeah. The Wolves didn't shoot 51 threes in this game. They attacked the rim more. And I think they shot 1 free throw in the entire first half.
Oh, yeah. So and it didn't come until late in the second quarter.
4 minutes left on an and one. Yeah. So there's still some frustrations, but by and large, the refs were not the reason why the Wolves lost this game. They weren't even the reason why they lost game one. But the Thunder are really good. It's annoying.
Tony, your reactions to the loss last night?
Yeah, I have a very similar sentiment. Admittedly, I did not watch a ton of Thunder regular season basketball or SGA, and I think that game showed me why they were the best team in the regular season, at least in the West, and why SGA was the MVP. I agree with Will. The fouls it was at least a lot more digestible to watch. I wasn't as much screaming at my TV as I was in the first game. And just the Thunder in general, they just looked really freaking good. And there were times where the Wolves looked good, but there were also times where they had stupid turnovers again. And I think you just saw why the Wolves were the 6th seed and the Thunder the 1 seed. And I think the home court advantage played into it a little bit. It just seemed like it was a great environment in both games 1 and game 2. And in the NBA, that can help a lot when you go on these runs. It just snowballs, and it was kind of seemed inevitable throughout that game, kind of that it was just going to happen. And the Thunder just kept going, and the Wolves, it just didn't seem as easy for them. It seemed easy for the Thunder. They're such a good fast break team too. They're just super athletic, and it just seemed like the Wolves were punching above their weight the whole game. And it just, to do that for an entire NBA conference final game is a tough ask. And we'll see how they look at home, but they just have to play almost perfect, I think, to beat this Thunder team right now. They just have too many options. They play too disciplined. They don't make many mistakes, and the Wolves are just making too many mistakes right now.
Yeah, the Wolves getting outscored on the fast break in the opening 2 games, 28-9. They had 0 fast break points in the first game, 9 last night, compared to the Thunder 16 last night. So just going back to your point, Tony, the Wolves pretty much have to play perfect to be able to get a win out of this series. Will, I want to go back to something you said, and we'll get to the two of the articles you guys wrote this morning that I find very interesting in a little bit. But I want you, Will, because you said it feels I don't remember your exact wording, but you kind of agreed that it felt like there's a very big uphill battle to climb for the Wolves to even get back into this series if they can even win it. So talk me into the Wolves finding a way to come all the way back and win this series.
Yeah, it starts with going home. And, the old saying is the series doesn't start until somebody loses at home. So the series hasn't really started, guys. We're just getting going here. The Thunder did what they were supposed to do. Now the Wolves are going to come back to Target Center, do what they're supposed to do, and beat them twice, which just one game at a time. They have to come out on Saturday night with a ton of energy, with a ton of discipline. The turnovers, I don't think they were quite as bad in this game as they were in game 1, but they were still bad. They have to be able to take care of the ball. You can't make lazy entry passes into the post because the guy's going to come over and help. That happened a couple times trying to get the ball to Julius Randle, who needs to play a lot better in game 3 than he did in game 2. It was his first real stinker of the playoffs. But I do think the energy and the atmosphere matters. I think the Wolves being at home will help because they haven't really been able to string together a lot of runs, which are so important in the NBA. And then those can be, to some extent, legitimately backed by the crowd. And I think that it was tough for the Wolves when the Thunder would go on one of their demoralizing runs and the crowd would be so into it. And that can be hard to kind of snap out of. So I think coming home, Target Center is going to be rocking. They still just have to make threes to some extent is their only path to winning this because the Thunder, their defense is so good. They pack the paint. They put so much on-ball pressure on you. The Wolves generated a bunch of open threes in that game, and they made a decent amount of them early on, like wide open corner threes. But then they still finished, I think, 11 of 39, which is 28%, which is actually worse than their 15 of 51 mark in game 1. If they're going to win, they have to, in game 3, shoot like 37, 38+% from 3, which is just, their regular season mark. They have to make those shots. It's not going to be some adjustment where, stop shooting so many threes, get downhill. You can only do that to such an extent when the team has so much ball pressure and they have Chet Holmgren and then Isaiah Hartenstein waiting in the middle. The Wolves are going to have to keep taking these open threes, and they just are going to have to start going in. And I hope that they will. We've said it several times in this playoffs, like, the Wolves aren't going to shoot that bad again. They seem to be due for a big shooting night. Oklahoma City probably also deserves some credit for, their closeouts and the way that they are able to disrupt some of the threes, but there were a lot of open ones that the Wolves missed. They got to come home, come out with energy, take care of the ball, shoot better. And I do think this Thunder team is extremely good. And like Tony was saying, which I agree with, like, it just feels like when they score, it's easy. It's fairly easy. And when the Wolves score, it was some kind of big accomplishment. That was the sense I got watching it. But I also don't think that they are unbeatable. I mean, the Nuggets took them to 7 games. Wolves beat them twice in the regular season. So take it one game at a time, defend home court, win these 2 games, turn it into a 3-game series. Do I think it's going to happen? No, but that would be me trying to talk you into it.
A depleted Nuggets side that is on an interim coach took them to 7 games. So
they
Wolves
also have the best player in the world, which helps a little bit.
Yes, it does help a little bit. And that'll go into my next point. But feels like the Wolves should be able to do a little bit better, if not get a little bit closer than the Thunder did. I mean, as I said, Thunder took them to 7 games, though they kind of got ran out of the building in that game 7. Just kind of everything wore down on them, having such a short rotation for them. Tony, going off the point of having the best player in the world, the talk of this series, the talk of the playoffs was Ant coming onto the scene and once again showing another layer and another depth to his game. And it seems like in this series that's kind of gone away a little bit. Hit 18 points in game one, had his first 30-point Western Conference final game last night with 32 points, but he's been obviously outshadowed and outplayed by the MVP SGA. And you wrote this morning that Edwards still has one more step to take in his game, 23 years old, so you'd expect still some more growth from him. Dive more into that topic for us here on the video, as we've seen Edwards kind of get outshined in this Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, I think it's a really fascinating discussion because just sports media in general, it's kind of like either a guy's good or he's bad. And when you're talking about like superstar level players like Anthony Edwards, I think it's a little more like nuanced than that. And like I love Anthony Edwards. He's 23 years old. He's proven himself that he's an all-NBA guy, and he will be as long as he's past his prime, I guess, maybe until he's like 33, 34. I'm pretty confident in that. But with that being said, I think he still has one step to take to become that kind of transcendent face of the league that everyone talks about him, because Jokic is carrying, or he carried a Nuggets team that had a lot of clear deficiencies. Interim head coach, 40-year-old Russell Westbrook and Michael Porter Jr. making boneheaded decisions, and he makes everyone around him so much better. And that's something LeBron did. That's something Luka does when he's taking the game seriously and not overweight. But like these great players, that's what they do. They elevate everyone around them. And I'm not saying Ant can't do that, and I'm not saying he hasn't done that, but for 2 playoffs in a row now, it seems like he starts so high, and I don't know if it's a conditioning thing or what it is, but last year in that Suns series, it seemed like he was like the greatest player of all time, and then it just slowly kind of came down. And then in that Mavericks series, he was playing like an all-star, but it's like he wasn't like holy crap, Anthony Edwards is the greatest thing I've ever seen. And that's kind of what I've been getting the feeling in this series. Looking at the box score, he played well last night. He didn't have any turnovers. And it's hard to nitpick his game, but it was a little bit that you're like, all right, like this guy's supposed to be Michael Jordan's son or whatever anyone talks about. Like he's really good. But it's like he's not elevating the Timberwolves, and he's not elevating his game on like the biggest stage. Like, he is only 23, so it's really hard to really give him a lot of criticism in these moments, but he's a guy, he's a superstar, and he needs to be judged at a superstar level. Any basketball player at his level has been judged like this in my lifetime, and I think hopefully he knows that, but I think he just still has one more level to get to if the Timberwolves want to get over this conference finals hump.
Yeah, and to your point, Anthony Edwards, as you said, 23. The guys that you bring up in your article, Luka Doncic, 26 now, SGA, 26 now. So those guys have got a little bit more experience, than Anthony Edwards does at this point, and a little bit more age on their bones than he does at this point. But what have you seen from him in this Western Conference final that's kind of changed from the first 2 rounds, where it seemed like the Wolves dispatched the Warriors and the Lakers pretty handily?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is just the level of competition rising and playing against by far the best defense in the NBA, one of the best defenses in modern NBA history, statistically, like relative to the average in the league at the time. Like, the Thunder are just an unreal defense. They've got a lot of things they can throw at Ant that are kind of perfectly designed to slow him down. When you talk about the on-ball defense of guys like Lou Dort and Alex Caruso and Jalen Williams and Cason Wallace, and even SGA is not a bad defender. He's a good defender, in fact. They just have a lot of guys to throw at you, and then if you get around them and you get to the paint, then there's rim protection waiting there. They're so in the gaps that actually the fact that he didn't have a turnover yesterday and had 6 assists and probably several other potential assists on shots that weren't made. I thought he played well in that game, but I think multiple things can be true. Anthony Edwards had another really, really impressive season. He's going to be second-team All-NBA for the second year in a row at 23 years old. top 10 and top 8 in MVP voting for the second year in a row. The future looks really, really bright with him. He's shown throughout his career that he can add things to his game. He wasn't a high-level three-point shooter prior to this year, and then he worked on it a bunch in the summer, and he came out and he led the league and made threes at nearly 40% on over 10 a game. So I think he's mentioned in little offhand comments like this summer I'm gonna work on my mid-range, and you know what, I believe that he will. I believe that he will go out and he will probably take a big leap in his mid-range efficiency next year, because that's just the kind of guy he seems to be. The work ethic, the drive. So I am very confident in Anthony Edwards long term. I think this season can still be considered a success, like I've said. After that trade, making the Western Conference Finals for the second year in a row, even if they lose in this round. But at the same time, yes, the broader point that Tony made is correct. He still has a level to go to be that first team All-NBA, MVP mix, elite number one on a true championship contending team. And we saw last year that Luka Doncic was that guy, and Anthony Edwards wasn't there yet. And we're seeing right now that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is that guy, and Anthony Edwards isn't there yet. He is not by any means the number one reason that the Wolves are down 2-0 in this series, or the number one, source of blame. There are a lot of other guys you go down the list who have not been playing well, but there still is another level that I think he needs to get to, and I think he will by the time he's 25, 26 years old. I really do. But yeah, he's just not quite there yet. I don't think that has to be some crazy overreaction and say, oh, I saw a tweet that was like, oh, the Ant era with the Wolves is going to turn out like Dame Lillard in Portland. It's like, no, Dame was like 32 and had made one conference finals and had lost in the first round a bunch of times. Ant is 23 years old. We don't need to overreact. Let's give him time. But yeah, he still has another level definitely that I think he can get to.
You mentioned helping him out, getting help for him, and you wrote about this, Will, over on Timberwolves on SI, how this matchup against the Thunder has exposed the Wolves' need for another point guard. Mike Conley, obviously at the ripe old age of 38, 39 at this point, a little bit old at this point to be playing heavy minutes, though. When he was on the court last night, he was a plus 14. So I mean, the Wolves pretty good when he was on the court last night, and that passed the eye test as well. When he's on the court, this team really was playing well against the Thunder. It's just you can't expect him to play all 40 minutes at his age. They don't really have a whole lot of options behind him that you trust. Dante DiVincenzo has been kind of rough in this postseason. Rob Dillingham's still a little bit young. You wrote about how the Wolves need him to develop. How do the Wolves help him out, help Anthony Edwards out by shoring up their guard position?
Yeah, I mean, basically the stats that led me to write this were in 51 minutes this series with Conley on the floor, the Wolves are a plus 19. In the 45 minutes with him off the floor, they're a minus 60. And Conley hasn't even been very good. Like, if you look at them, he's scored 10 points, 6 assists, 6 rebounds in this series. He only has 1 turnover, but it's just the fact that he has that calm and that poise and that veteran ability, and he's a point guard, and he can get you into your offense without turning the ball over and kind of maintain some calm in the chaos of playing against this Thunder defense. So I just think it's really interesting, and plus minus is obviously a flawed stat, but when it's that extreme, it tells you something that they've won Conley's minutes and they've lost the minutes when he hasn't been out there disastrously. And Dante DiVincenzo, I love Dante DiVincenzo. I think he's been a big pickup for the Timberwolves. I think he's going to be a big piece of their rotation for a couple more years to come on a valuable contract. But he's a shooting guard. He's not a point guard. And I think he's been playing. He's had to kind of play out of that role a little bit and have the ball in his hands more than maybe is ideal. And he's a minus 47 in this series in 2 games. He hasn't shot the ball well. He's got as many turnovers as assists. So yeah, the Wolves need another ball handler who can run things with that second unit, have Dante play off the ball. Ant can play off the ball more. And that's why they drafted Rob Dillingham 8th overall last year. They traded those future assets to go up and get him. But he turned 20 in January, and they just don't think he's ready yet. So that is a big thing to watch moving forward. Can Rob this summer develop into a guy who Chris Finch trusts in his rotation? Because I think he can fill that role as the second ball handler the Wolves need. And then eventually Conley's not going to be playing for too much longer. So ideally, Dillingham can become that guy. But yeah, I think that's been a big takeaway from the series is they just don't have that secondary ball handler who can help kind of keep things organized. And that's just been a chaotic. It's been part of the reason why the Wolves have not handled the Thunder defense well at all. And they've given up some of these big runs.
Is the only option for the Wolves in getting that help at point guard and getting another ball handler on the squad, hoping that Dillingham does develop into that because of what their cap situation looks like, Tony? Or is there another option? Can you see a trade coming this offseason where they bring in some help on that part of the court?
Yeah, it's definitely the clearest option. They have a little bit of draft capital. Maybe Tim Connolly's a magician. Maybe he pulls something off. But I think it's definitely a really fascinating discussion because if you look in the last 20 to 40 years of the NBA, dominant shooting guards, these all-time great shooting guards like Michael Jordan, Kobe, Allen Iverson, Dwayne Wade, they never really played with like a great point guard by any means. They always kind of had a guy that was kind of deferring to him. He could facilitate, and he was that secondary ball handler, but it was never a point guard that was like at an all-star level when any of those guys were in their prime. Dwayne Wade's kind of interesting because LeBron is like a pseudo point guard, but when you have a ball-dominant shooting guard like Ant that does his own facilitating, but he's not a true point guard, it's really interesting the type of point guard you want to play next to him. And Rob Dillingham has a really unique skill set because he's not really a great facilitator by any means. That's not the strength of his game. He's a score-first point guard. That's what he's done his whole career. I think he can become a facilitator, and I think he can improve there. But that's going to be a really interesting thing in the next 5 to 10 years as Dillingham and Edwards both continue to develop, is how do they play together? Because I think that if Dillingham, I guess, hits his potential, that could be what opens this next window for the Wolves. Because in the much bigger discussion, the Thunder are going to be the team they have to beat the next 5 years. Like, this might be the worst the Thunder are in the next 5 years, which is crazy to think. But they have 1 million draft picks. So the Dillingham part of this is definitely a very interesting future outlook thing for the Wolves. I think you're muted.
Yeah, I'm muted because my kid's in the background. I was going to say it's going to be interesting to see how this all develops, and hopefully we get a bounce back game in Game 3. Before we go, predictions for Game 3, what do you expect to see? Tony, I'll start with you, then Will.
It's a good question. It should be one of the biggest games in Target Center history, but after the first 2 games, I could imagine the fans being, a little down, but I think Minneapolis will be buzzing. Memorial Day weekend, I think we'll see a better showing from the Wolves, and I think they sneak one out in a close one in the end.
Bill?
Yeah, there's no real basketball reason after watching these 2 games for me to be overly confident in the Wolves, but I do think they've been a resilient team all year. I think they will find a way to dig deep, make some shots, take care of the basketball, feed off the crowd, and I think they'll find a way to win Game 3. And then, as far as winning Game 4, we'll see. But I think they will. I think they'll get it done. I think Ant and some of the other guys on this team are going to step up. Jaden played really well, I thought, in Game 2, and they're gonna find a way to win.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Looking forward to reading more of your work over on Timberwolves on SI. Go read all their work there, as well as Vikings, Gophers, and Twins on SI as well, covering it all for you. Hit subscribe to the YouTube channel. It does help us get found. Also notifies you every time we post a new video here. We'll talk to you next week sometime, hopefully with another Wolves game coming up. We'll see, because we got the Memorial Day holiday on Monday, so we'll be back on Tuesday. Hopefully we'll have more Wolves.
Yeah, it'll be 2-2 on Tuesday.
Yeah, looking forward to it.